Obviously, I have no special wisdom on it, but my gut tells me this economy is recovering faster, inflation is moving quicker, and it may not be quite as transitory as we all think.
That was Morgan Stanley CEO James Gorman discussing the future of inflation. And while he believes rate hikes are not as transitory as people think, other investors are still trying to read the clues. Over at JP Morgan, their CEO Jamie Dimon says there's a very good chance it's here to stay and that they'll be hoarding cash just in case. Joining me now, co-founder and chief strategist at GDP Advisors, Seth Denson. Seth, thank you for joining me. So Seth, is it time to hoard cash, if you will?
Listen, if Jamie Dimon's doing it, it's probably a good thing to do. I tell people, follow what the banks do a lot of times. If they're hoarding cash, you probably should be too. They have their ears to the ground, and they know a lot. So don't try to outsmart them sometimes. Follow their lead.
Yeah, and then when it comes to inflation, obviously there's a big concern, and it doesn't seem like it's slowing down. It's just every day you go to the store, everything's a little bit more expensive. Gas is expensive, and I don't see the Biden administration doing anything to reverse that. Their policies and everything that they keep suggesting and implementing is going to make it tougher and harder for average Americans to pay their bills.
Yeah, the Biden administration's monetary policy certainly isn't one that would decrease inflation. Specifically, you pump more cash into the system, inflation's going to go up. The Fed is literally holding on by a razor-thin edge, just trying to do all they can. The Fed has originally indicated they didn't want to raise interest rates till 2023. They're now walking that back, recognizing that raising interest rates is pretty much the main hedge against inflation. So, listen, when they came out earlier, I guess last week, maybe we even talked about it, Stephanie, where they said it was transitory. We all kind of shook our heads and said, well, what does that mean? And now the Fed is saying, hey, we're gonna weigh the average inflation over a period of time, as opposed to what they normally do, which is when it hits 2%, they raise interest rates. Now they want to see an average. Well, guess what? We're already there, and organizations like Barclays are now saying that even in the fourth quarter, we're going to see it near 4%.
Yeah. You know, on the show, we talk a lot about politics and just kind of the Democrats and the media, what they spend most of their day talking about, which is racism and how terrible this country is and how racist we all are. But there's some serious things going on in the economy that we should be focusing on. And I saw this headline. The Washington Street Journal actually wrote about it, which is kind of surprising. Didn't get a lot of attention. There's like a few people that were talking about it. But they're calling it a pandemic hangover, that there's $11 trillion in corporate debt. So they're talking about all of the stressed companies that have been piling on debt, especially during this pandemic. And I mean, what does that mean for regular Americans as these corporations continue to pile on the debt?
Well, there's a lot of things. One is obviously we point to the obvious, which is that these companies have to raise prices to offset the debt. That's one thing. But the second thing that we don't often talk about is many of these companies are publicly traded, which means they're in your 401k, they're in your retirement accounts, they're in your investment accounts. And that's really why we're seeing this doubling down of debt and this issuance of bond. In 2020, there's $1.7 trillion in bond issuance, corporate bond issuance, which is, $600 billion more than the year before. And that's for two reasons. One is obviously cost of capital has been really cheap because interest rates were low, so it made sense. Then you had the pandemic where things were shut down, and banks and investors were throwing good money, trying to hope that they weren't throwing it after bad because they're already highly leveraged. So they almost had to buy these bonds and had to lend out money. Well, what does that mean to the end user like you and me? Cost of goods are going up, resources are going down, and we've got to make sure these companies stay afloat, or otherwise our investment accounts are going to go down.
Yeah, and then if you talk to any business owner, they talk about what they're experiencing and how expensive things are for them. And they're not taking pay cuts. They're not going to absorb this pain. They all admit that they're going to have to raise their prices. So it's not like a big secret here. I thought this was interesting, too. There was an article written about how entry-level corporate lawyers can now make over $200,000. I always thought lawyers were well paid, but maybe I was wrong. Is that significant to you?
It is for a couple of reasons. One is, interestingly enough, we go back a few years, there were more lawyers than there were jobs to fill the lawyers. And the average cost or pay for lawyers went down significantly. Then we saw a rise in paralegals. And that's kind of the natural ebb and flow of we'll call it the legal economy. That being said, what this signals to me, and this is specifically in corporate lawyer jobs, is that the business structure recognizes that the business climate is going to be shifting very quickly, whether that's tax policy, whether that's foreign policy, whether that's the need to maybe file bankruptcy or move money overseas. And so they're lawyering up, or even social issues, right? Companies are going to get sued, and so they're lawyering up, and so that I'm reading the tea leaves on that and saying, well, if they're doing it, we probably should make sure we've got one on retainer pretty quick.
Yeah, I guess that would be a wise decision if they can afford it. Now, consumer confidence remains high, but some are wondering if that's propped up by a false sense of security. Do you think that's the case?
Well, I do. I think consumer confidence is high for a couple of reasons. One is we just have a lot of liquidity in the market and people have cash. If you're unemployed, you're still in many states getting the $300 a week gross up. That's ending in 23 states this month. But nonetheless, so confidence is high, and I think it's pinned up confidence, right? Many Americans couldn't go out and spend their money. The reality will hit soon, though, if it's not already hitting, which is that cost of goods are going up, cash is going to be worth less, and eventually the chickens of the liquidity in the market are going to come home to roost. So while it is propped up, I don't think it's lasting long.
And then really quickly, Bitcoin is back up. It's at 40,000 right now. And this is after Elon Musk said that Tesla may accept it again. What is going on with Elon Musk? He's kind of all over the place with this. And then we're seeing this roller coaster with Bitcoin because of it.
Well, the roller coaster with Bitcoin, yeah. Well, the roller coaster with Bitcoin is like I talk about the weather in Texas, right? Wait 5 minutes, it's going to change. But nonetheless, that's where we are with that. I am terrified of anything that can be influenced by one person's tweet. I don't care who the person is. And so, listen, Elon Musk, I think sometimes he's playing with the market, right? He tweets out something and all of a sudden it jumps and it jumps down. But give it a minute, it's going to go back down, and then give it 2 more minutes, it's going to go back up. But that's the world of crypto.
So do you think this is by design or a strategy of his? Obviously, you didn't have a conversation with him why he's doing it, but like as an outsider, why do you think he's doing this?
Listen, Elon, call me maybe. I don't know. But nonetheless, I am not going to try to get into the mind of Elon Musk. I think those are waters I can't wade. But I do. Listen, when you have the amount of money he has, he can play with the market like some of us play with a puppy in the yard. And maybe that's part of it. I don't know if it's strategy or just entertainment, but nonetheless, it's happening. And we all jump to it in the crypto world. When I say we all, I mean not me, because I'm not in it. We've talked about that stuff.
Yeah. Well, remember, don't be too harsh on crypto or Bitcoin, because then I get angry emails. So
again, they're coming at me too.
Send them your way. I'm just here. I'm just talking about it. I don't have a huge opinion on Bitcoin. So anyway, Seth, we're out of time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steph.